Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 696. Return to Empire 4. News of the cadets returning to the Empire had already started to make waves across the Empire. Journalists started to wait before Haven's Academy grounds, each one holding onto several recording devices and notepads. From what I've heard, it shouldn't take too long for them to arrive. Any minute now. Who do you think received the highest score? I'm not sure. As far as I'm aware, the recording stopped halfway through their mission. The cadets' graduation trial was an event that was meant to be displayed throughout the entire world. It would not only showcase their skills, but it would also give the general population an idea of how dangerous the mirror dimension was, alongside displaying ways to survive. Overall, this was generally something that most empires accepted and wanted the public to know about. With the ever-expanding mirror dimension, there was a chance that they might need such knowledge. From what I've heard, the cadets headed deeper into the mirror dimension, which is why the recording stopped. Thankfully, the Chancellor is with them, and so it doesn't seem like anything bad happened to the cadets. The discussions were animated, and a certain fervor started to envelop the Academy grounds. They should be coming out soon. Linus was amongst the people in the crowd, staring at the open dome that housed the mirror crack of the Academy, revealing it to everyone present. His expression was rather complicated. I've managed to rank second in my year. If I'm given time, I should be able to reach first in the next year. I've grown strong enough to stand at the very top, and people have finally stopped looking down on me. And yet, I can't seem to be happy about it all. For what reason did Linus train? He trained because of his dreams. The nightmares that used to constantly haunt him, reminding him of the possible future. He trained to stop the maniac that was his brother. And yet, dead. His brother was dead. It had been over 6 months since he had heard the news, and in that time the nightmares seemed to have stopped. He should have been happy. Happy about the fact that he no longer had to worry about the nightmares and his brother. Happy that he could be at peace again. And yet, I feel so empty. All that Linus felt was a strange emptiness. The emptiness stemmed from the fact that he never got to show him his changes. He never got to make him see how much he had grown. Just to stop him. I see a fluctuation. They're coming. All of a sudden, several voices echoed loudly across the crowd as Linus slowly raised his head to see figures slowly emerging from the crack. Click, click. The repetitive sound of shutters clicking echoed, and immediately the place fell into chaos as the reporters pushed forward. Over here. Look over here. Look at me. I see the princess. Princess, look over here. Prince. Over here. The chaos grew more and more pronounced with each passing second, and Linus felt that he had no other choice but to move back. Either way, he wasn't really interested in seeing the cadets returned. He was only here as a formality. Now that they were back, he could finally return to training. However, right as he was about to turn, from the faintest corner of his eyes, he spotted a certain figure. HM? As his head flicked in that direction, he found himself staring at one of the Academy guards. He blinked his eyes slowly. Was I seeing things? He scratched the back of his neck. In the end, shaking his head, he left the premises. Click, click. Please look over here. Over here. Holy shit. Looking at the chaos that was unfolding before my very eyes, I took several steps back. Thankfully, I had been prepared beforehand and got Delilah to hand me the Academy Guard uniform. Using the uniform, I managed to sneak my way out of the crack. But there was only one problem. Hey, help out over here. Stop the reporters from coming in. I was now truly mistaken for a guard, and in order not to break my cover, I had no other choice but to follow their instructions as I hurriedly moved to help them. Don't push. Hey, watch it. Very clearly noticing me, Leon's head turned and our eyes met. Oh fuck. I immediately felt a sinking feeling as Leon tapped on the others and then pointed in my direction. Why are they heading this way? The guards around me panicked, and so did I as the reporters suddenly grew more numerous and my workload increased. Leon and the others, on the other hand, looked completely unfazed as they pretended to go in my direction. These bastards. Just wait until I'm fully back. I'll make sure to destroy all of you. The reason why I kept my identity a secret was simple. Atlas. If he were to be aware of my existence, he'd immediately come find me. From what I knew, he wasn't in the academy, but I couldn't afford to take any risks. Whether he knew my real identity or not, I didn't know. However, I couldn't take any more risks than I already had. And so, tap. Gently pressing my foot against the ground, the gravity around increased a tiny bit, and the movements of everyone present slowed down considerably. What's going on? Why am I suddenly out of breath? The faces of a few reporters grew paler and some even grew red from the strain. However, I ignored it and urged the cadets out of the mess. Get out. Oh. The other guards followed my example and pushed the cadets past. As it was Leon's turn to go out, he gave me a side glance before silently making a laughing gesture and leaving. I could only trace his back with my eyes before forcing the others out. It was this way that we managed to clear all the cadets away from the mess, and I was finally able to leave. Hoof! Before I knew it, I found myself sitting on one of the benches around the academy, wiping away the sweat that had formed on my forehead. Remind me not to ever work as a guard at the academy ever. This job felt like hell. Most likely the salary was also pretty shit. Well, I guess I have to do what I have to do to support the family. Chuckling, I lowered my head to stare at the ring on my finger. The one that looked identical to hers. Fiancé, huh? I wasn't even sure if she was just joking or not, but whatever the case was, I was gonna roll with it. She was beautiful. She was rich and she was powerful. What more could I even ask for? Even if she didn't want me anymore, I planned on sticking to her like an octopus. PFTT. The thought made me laugh a little. But I really meant my words. I wasn't going to let go. She's mine. Chancellor. Chancellor. Any words regarding the cadets' performances? Do you have anything to say about how they performed? Was there anyone who failed? Seeing how every single one made it back, does that mean everyone passed? Chancellor. The moment Delilah stepped out of the gate, all focus turned on her. This was only natural. Not only was her appearance enough to draw all eyes, but she was also the strongest person within the empire. She was the center of attention wherever she went. As her black coat resting above her shoulders fluttered, Delilah calmly gazed across the surroundings. Seeing the numerous reporters, her lips gently parted. The cadets have just finished their examination. The results of the assessment will be given on a future date. Please let the cadets rest, and the academy will give out a statement later. There have been no injuries and all have returned safely. Thank you. And with that, Delilah nodded and her figure faded from before the eyes of everyone present. Wait, Chancellor. The reporters grew frantic, trying their best to get a statement, but it was already too late. Delilah was already gone. Swoosh. With the curtains of her office ballooning, Delilah gently stepped into it and looked around. It was rather dark, but it was spotless. During her absence, someone must have cleaned the place. Satisfied, Delilah sat down on her seat. But right as she did, something flickered in front of her. Delilah. A face that belonged to someone she knew appeared in front of her. His expression was serious, but looking closely one could see the subtle worry on his face. Father. How was the trip? Did anything go wrong? No. Delilah replied flatly. Everything went well. I see. Orson nodded his head slowly as the room fell silent. But only for a brief moment, as Orson's face changed subtly. About our previous discussion. You said you have someone you're engaged to. Who is it? Why have you never told me about it before? Can't be that you just made it up to run away from me asking, right? That would be rather sad. It's not. Delilah shook her head. My fiancé. She paused, and the image of a certain person flashed across her mind. He exists. Then why have I never seen him? Because I don't want to. Then I don't approve. He can't be your fiancé if I can't see him. Delilah's brows knit together as she looked at her father. Indeed, in order to be officially recognized as her fiancé, he'd need her father's approval. How troublesome. Fine. In the end, she nodded her head. I'll bring him eventually. Really? Orson's eyes lit up. You're not going to get some poor soul to play as your fiancé, right? If you... Click. The conversation ended there as Delilah hung up. She was used to these types of conversations. It was the only thing that her father would talk about. Fiancé this, fiancé that. He really didn't believe that she had one. But she had one. One that she wasn't planning on letting go. After all, it took her so long just to get him. It would be rather troublesome if she had to look for another one. And she didn't want to look for another one. It had to be him. She really meant her words. Delilah wasn't going to let go. After all, he's mine. Chapter 697. Undercurrents. 1. I shouldn't take my time leaving this place. I've already overstayed my welcome. Coming out of the dorms, I looked at the familiar scenery in front of me. It had been a while since I had seen it, and I had grown to miss it a little. At the very least, the fresh air here was a lot better than the dry and arid air of the mirror dimension. Yeah, I don't want to do another trip as long as this one in the mirror dimension again. I can also see why people lose it when they stay there for too long. The place was simply not something humans were meant to live in. While some cities thrived, the general living conditions for most people were poor. It wasn't something that I'd be able to endure for more than a year. The fact that Anaz and Anne were still able to live there was impressive. But it wasn't without its own sacrifices. Well, enough with that. Having gotten everything that I needed from the dorms, it was time for me to leave. The next destination was the Ivinus household where my brother was. I wonder how he's doing. The two of us needed to talk a lot. That bastard. How could he be so vague? Shaking my head, I had just taken a step forward when I felt a certain wiggling sensation coming from my sleeve. Looking down, a small crab emerged from my sleeve. Wobbles. Looking at the crab, I didn't know how to feel. This place feels weird. I didn't make the wrong decision. Staring at the distant sun, Wobbles closed its eyes and started to bathe in it. Honestly, I'm surprised Wobbles decided to come with me. But then again, this was primarily due to Almighty and Pebble putting weird ideas into the poor crab's mind. I didn't know what they said, but the moment I was about to leave with Delilah and the others, the crab insisted on following me. Obviously, I wasn't going to reject such an offer, and I agreed. Now not only do I have Almighty, but I also have Wobbles as a destroyer-ranked support. Their presence was also the main reason why I had to leave. While most people wouldn't be able to detect them, if someone were strong enough they'd be able to detect them almost immediately. Taking a deep breath and feeling the scorching heat that descended from above, I looked around, and before I knew it, I was now standing by the entrance of the academy. People flocked in and out, most likely trying to get a peek at the third years. It was chaotic and loud. But there was a certain charm to it that I couldn't help but smile at. Staring at the academy gates for the last time, I turned around and left. Goodbye, Haven. Groaning, I fixed my back while trying my best to maintain my posture. Tararr. But that was easier said than done. Feeling the carriage bumping even more ferociously from before, I opened the window and peeked out. How long until we get there? And, can't you drive a bit slower? We're almost there. Bear with it for a little longer. Hearing the coachman's reply, I almost cursed at him. This was the 10th time that he had said the same thing. The journey to the Ivinus household wasn't easy. First I had to take the train to Lens and then switch to another line before taking a carriage that went directly to the main estate. This was at least a couple of days' worth of travel. I could already practically feel my back screaming out for help. Shit. Next time I'll just get someone to teleport me here. This is too much. Forget about the MO. We've arrived. Following the coachman's voice, the carriage came to a halt, and I didn't waste a single second and opened the carriage, tossing a bag of coins to the coachman before looking at the estate in the distance. Eh? I had half expected the estate to look even grander than before, but instead I was stunned to find it in a state of decay. The fountain at the entrance had long stopped flowing, its basin cracked and dry. The once vibrant plants were wilted, their once vibrant colors completely gone. Not only that, but the butlers and guards who once kept the estate pristine were nowhere to be seen. As I looked around, the place felt abandoned, eerily quiet and empty. What the hell? You look confused. It was the coachman's voice that brought me out of my shock. Slowly turning my head, I saw him sigh while looking at the estate. The place was much different in the past. Not even that far in the past. Just half a year ago this place was thriving. With the emergence of the twin, I coughed and looked back at the coachman, who looked at me weirdly. As I was saying, with the emergence of the twin, are you okay? I am fine. Just tired from the trip. Coughing again, I asked. I get that the place was once thriving, but why is it like this? Did something happen? It looks like you really don't know. The coachman sighed and shook his head. Just a lot of bad financial decisions, pressure from outer nobles who wanted a slice of the pie, and the sudden revelation regarding Prince Leon. Ooh, my stomach was now rumbling. Prince Leon? I really felt like throwing up. I see. The Ivinus household was simply growing too quickly and was too greedy. In the end, you can only blame the family head for them being in this state. Shaking his head again, the coachman whipped the horse's leashes and slowly turned the carriage around. Young man, I don't know what sort of business you might have with the Ivinus household, but I advise you to stay far away from them. They're a sinking ship. And with such words, the carriage started to move, fading into the distance as I stood in the same spot for a good while. Sinking ship? I smiled, shaking my head as I recalled a certain conversation I once had with Aldrich. Far from it. Moving ahead, I entered the mansion. Given that there was no one inside, I didn't even bother hiding my presence as I just walked in. As expected, it's empty inside. Looking around, I moved onto the second floor and stopped before a particular office. I was just about to raise my hand to knock when a soft voice echoed from behind. Come in. Clank. I didn't stand in ceremony and opened the door. Waiting for me in the office with his back facing my direction and his gaze directed towards the large window that displayed the scenery outside, Noel slowly turned his head, a thin smile spread across his lips as he looked at me. It took you a while. Opening my mouth, I closed it shortly after as I found a sofa and sat down. Yes, it did. And whose fault do you think it is? Noel merely smiled and similarly sat down, pressing both elbows against the desk and leaning his chin over his bridged fingers. I don't know. He feigned ignorance at first, but then, you should probably ask my brother. I learned it from him. Even now, I still don't know what he's planning. My face froze and I found myself unable to retort. Fuck. He got me good. The fact that I also didn't know made the situation even worse. Thankfully now that I had collected all of the relics I could start the process of remembering everything. At least that was what Noelle told me. No wait, I still need to get the chalice from Leon. That'd be a bit troublesome to get. Alright. Recalling the state that the estate was in, I glanced at Noelle. I assume that you're about to start soon? Noelle smiled. I am. You're just in time. Leaning back against his chair, Noelle's eyes glinted with a certain coldness that felt completely unfamiliar from the warm expression he had been wearing a few moments prior. It made me straighten my back for a short moment. The movements around the household have started to grow more rampant. It won't be long before the other noble houses around will start trying to take over the land. I've gradually made the guards and people working for the estate run away from this place in order to make it seem that we're facing difficult times. Right? This was something he had previously filled me in on. The Ivinus household was far from poor. Following the trade agreement with the Kasha, we were actually extremely rich. However, in order to enact his plan, Noelle had the Verlice family directly take their side of the trade. A lot of the profits that they made were secretly passed over to us so that Noelle could secretly build a force strong enough to completely take over the several noble houses that were planning on taking over. I've accumulated enough wealth and power to directly swallow everything in the vicinity without bloating our estate. Noelle's voice quietly drifted across the office as he slowly stood up, his hand pressing against the table. We'll make it extremely swift. So swift that no one will see it coming. By the time we've swallowed everything up, it'll be too late for the Empire to react. We'll have enough land to directly rival the duchies while also posing enough threat to the Empire that they'd be forced to do something. Listening to this part, one frowned. Wouldn't that be a bad thing? I get taking over a bunch of nobles but directly confronting the Megrail family? What are you planning? Looking at me, Noelle smiled. Emmett, brother. Noelle pulled his hand away from the desk while looking towards the outer court of the estate. Do you really think I don't know this? Well, yeah. I knew Noelle wasn't stupid enough not to know this. I was just trying to figure out what he was thinking. But each time I saw him, it became harder to read him, like he was slipping further behind some invisible wall I couldn't break through. Torin will soon try to absorb your blood. Pursed my lips. I see. He will fail. Huh? I blinked my eyes, slowly looking at Noelle, whose face grew so dark that he almost looked like an entirely different person. That's when I'll do it. He breathed out slowly. I'll kill the Emperor. Chapter 698. Undercurrents. 2. Wait. I had to take a moment to properly process Noelle's words as I stared at him in shock. Did he just say he was going to kill the Emperor? What? Why? The Emperor is just a pup. That's exactly why, Emmett. Noelle placed his hand over his face, massaging it slowly while mumbling, the Emperor is a puppet. He is Torin's puppet. That's why I'm going to kill him. It is about time that someone replaces him. Replaces him? My eyes widened for a brief moment. What could he? Wait, are you saying that you're going to replace the current Emperor? Are you going to pose as the Emperor? But don't you think Sithno Torin would notice you? If that's the case, then I won't be directly taking over. Noelle cut me off before I could continue further. There's no need for me to take over at all. The death of the Emperor is all that I'm going for. But why? Why would he? It was right then that it hit me. When the Emperor dies, the Megrail family will have no time to think about the Ivinus household. The battle for the throne will begin and all attention will be fixed on that. This will be the perfect time for us to consolidate our power. And Noelle's lips slowly pulled into a thin smile as he looked at me. It won't be long before we'll be pulled into the succession battle. I swallowed quietly, feeling myself get lost in Noelle's hazel eyes that seemed to be swirling with indifference. The more I looked at him, the more different he felt from the Noelle that I knew. Just how much had he gone through to become like this? The thought made my chest feel incredibly heavy, as though several elephants had been forced to rest over it. Considering your relationship with the daughter of the Megrail family, she will come and reach out for your help. That'll be the perfect time for us to join and quietly absorb even more. Torin will be busy healing up from his wounds while we slowly take more and more from him. By the time all of this ends, the Ivinus household should become strong enough to control the entire empire. Noelle's words quietly echoed across the room as I remained seated where I was processing everything that I'd heard. My thoughts were rather complicated. On one hand, this seemed like a necessary step. But on the other hand, I could see how this could go extremely wrong. But most importantly, how are you so sure that Torin will fail to absorb my blood? From the way Noelle spoke, his plan seemed to revolve around the fact that Torin would fail to absorb my blood. But what if he didn't fail? Would everything go up in smoke? No, rather, there was a very high chance that we'd be in danger since he might come for us. He will fail. Noelle repeated, his gaze growing a little listless. Placing his hand over the table, he sat back down on his chair as he turned his gaze towards me. He will fail. He repeated, prompting me to frown. I get that. You've already said that before, but you haven't told me why he will fail. If it doesn't work then, I know he will fail. Noel cut me off again, causing me to frown even more deeply. I was starting to get annoyed now. Why was he repeating the same thing over and over again? Was he trying to dodge the answer? Was he simply going by blind faith? Why was he so confident that Torin was going to fail? This entire plan hinged on the fact that Torin was going to fail. If he didn't fail, then the consequences were going to be disastrous. Yes, I know. You said it. But how are you so sure? What gives you the confidence that you? Noel said slowly, bringing his hand up and pointing at me. You are the reason why I'm so confident. Huh? What does this even? You are the one who told me that he'll fail. And Noel's eyes grew a little clearer, his lips pulling into a genuine smile. My brother never lies to me. Ah, what could I even say after hearing this? If he isn't lying and it's really me, or more precisely the past me, who told him all of this, then it is very likely to be true. I trusted that I wouldn't lie about matters like this. But it was also because I knew that this was very likely going to be true that I felt a headache coming. I don't know whether Aoife is close to her father or not, but things will be quite messy if she does end up finding out. I could practically picture the calamity meter going up. Right, thinking about it now that I don't have the system with me, I haven't been able to see the meter. Did it rise in the time that I wasn't here? I really wanted to know. However, I knew that I'd soon get my answers. I'll get my answers once I gain my memories back. I could just ask Noel, but from the looks of things he won't answer me. Mostly because he's being petty, but also because he most likely doesn't know. I didn't know who to curse now. My past self or Noel. There should still be some time before Torin starts to absorb the blood and the nobles will start to make their move. Noel's voice brought me out of my thoughts. In the meantime, you can go to your room and rest. Noel paused. I can see that you're not too far off from reaching the 7th tier. Try to reach it before everything starts. You have about a couple of months. That's easier said than done. Reaching the 7th tier was incredibly difficult. It wasn't as easy as the previous tiers. While I was indeed close to reaching it, I didn't feel like I'd be able to break through anytime soon. My estimate is about 1 more year, but that's too long. I need to think of a way to get there faster. The only issue was that there were no simple shortcuts to reaching the next tier. The only way I could break through to the 7th tier was... wait. A thought suddenly occurred to me. Now that I think about it, there might be a way for me to reach tier 7 fast. Right now, all I needed was a certain push. A push that would help me break through to the next tier. And if I could think of the few times that I had received such push, it'd be the time when I absorbed Exahurl's bone and the time when Almighty evolved into a destroyer-ranked creature. If I could replicate such a scenario, then I'd be able to rank up. This was possible. Pebble. As I thought about the egg and the blood I'd infused into it, I felt certain I could now give Pebble its own body. When that happens, Pebble might be able to rank up and reach the destroyer rank, and I'll be able to benefit directly from it and reach the 7th tier. This was all a theory, and I wasn't certain that it would work, but it was certainly worth a shot. HM? It looks like you've figured something out. Hearing Noel's words, I slowly raised my head to look at him before nodding. I did, but I'm not sure if it'll work. Okay. Noel smiled. You have a couple of months to figure it out. I would like to help you, but I'll be rather busy in the upcoming months. There is a lot that I need to prepare. Standing up, Noel stretched his neck while gazing at the window. It'll be a long couple of months. Clank. Coming out of Noel's office, I didn't waste a single second. Taking out the egg, I walked towards the back garden of the estate and found a more secluded area before sitting down and calling out for Pebble. Are you here? Yes. Appearing near one of the bushes, Pebble looked at the egg with a complicated expression. I smiled at the sight. What? Are you not happy about the fact that you'll be able to get a new body? It's not that human. Pebble shook its small head while moving closer to the egg and placing its paw over it. I'm just curious about what it would feel like to have a body again. I never had the chance to properly feel it before I suddenly found myself trapped in a curse cast on me by a human girl. Would it feel any different? I didn't really know how to answer. It was only now that I recalled Pebble's past. I've been so used to Pebble's antics that I've forgotten all about its past. Pebble is still, technically, a child. From the moment Pebble was born, it had been trapped in a curse by Aurelia. It had never gotten to truly expand its wings and feel the air. Pebble had never gotten the chance to truly fly. I guess that also explains to me why Pebble always gets bullied by Almighty. The age difference between the two was staggering. Looking at Pebble, the only thing I could offer the small cat was a comforting smile. I guess we'll figure out soon enough how it will feel, right? Yes. Moving towards the egg, Pebble sat close to it, turning its eyes towards me. I'm ready. Okay. I took a deep breath, pulling the mirror from my ring, and fixed my gaze on the egg. Carefully, I uncorked a vial containing a mysterious black liquid and poured it over the egg. The black liquid was the blood of the outer being that was found within the monster's back at the eclipsed maw. I had collected quite a bit of it in order to make this happen. I was a man of my word after all. Sizzle. The moment the liquid touched the egg, a sizzling sound reverberated through the air, and the egg started to react. I immediately looked at Pebble. Get ready. I channeled my mana into the mirror. We're about to start. Chapter 699. Undercurrents. 3. The sky. What was it like to feel the sky? What did it feel like to drift through the sky? To sense the soft touch of the wind as the world below slowly shrank into the distance? Such were the questions Pebble continuously asked itself. Since birth it had never felt what it was like to touch the sky, to feel the sky, or to be with the sky. No, there was a time when it happened. But that was also the time when Pebble died and lost its life. Get ready, Pebble. It's almost ready. The human's soft voice reached the cat's ears, slowly bringing its attention toward the egg that sat before the human. Pebble slowly inched towards the egg, feeling the pulse of life coming from it. The cat felt a sudden sense of anticipation while staring at the egg. Would it finally be able to feel the sky? Throb. Okay. The human's voice rang out again, his eyes fixed on the egg that showed a certain reaction. Get ready, Pebble. I'll soon use the mirror to transfer your soul into the egg. The process should be relatively easy, and the moment you come out of the egg, given your current power, you should be able to grow to your adult form. Okay. Pebble stepped forward, staring at the egg with a rare seriousness. Rustle. Just then the cat felt a presence coming from behind it. A smirk played at the cat's lips. Stupid owl. I'm about to catch up. See if you'll be able to bully me again. Pebble recalled all the times that foolish owl had taken advantage of it and all the pain and frustration it had been forced to endure. I'll definitely pay everything back soon. Mumbling to itself, the cat didn't notice the peculiar look the owl was giving it. In the end, the human's voice rang out again. Okay, I'm ready. He channeled his mana into the mirror, and a powerful glow manifested over the mirror, enveloping the surroundings in a bright light. Turning his head, the human looked at Pebble. Go. Pebble didn't waste a single second. The moment it heard the human's voice, it ran towards the mirror. Swoosh! Pebble quickly disappeared into the mirror. Julian's eyes flashed, and he brought the mirror over the egg. The mana inside of his body rapidly drained. However, he didn't mind. He had already anticipated this, as he quickly focused all of his attention on Pebble. Now that Pebble was inside the mirror, the connection he felt with Pebble was completely severed. Ooh! Taking a deep breath, Julian looked at the egg and muttered. This is all on you now. Julian brought the mirror down, and a white light enveloped the egg completely. The light was blinding, covered the entire surroundings. If not for the fact that Julian had known in advance and had made preparations, almost everyone within the vicinity would have noticed the spectacle. Normally it wouldn't matter, since it was just him and Noel in the estate. However, given the current situation, there were, without a doubt, spies around. As such, Julian had to be as subtle as possible with his actions. Swoosh! Thankfully the light didn't last for very long. As soon as it rose, it gradually faded before disappearing completely. Silence. What followed was a deft silence as Julian focused his attention on the egg. Closing his eyes, he could feel faint traces of life in the egg, but it was faint. Did it succeed? This was the first time Julian had attempted something like this. He was unaware of whether it had worked or not. Eventually he turned his attention towards Almighty. The owl stood on top of one of the tree branches as it looked at the egg in silence. What do you think? Julian asked, causing the owl to turn its attention towards it. The owl stood in silence for the next several seconds before eventually shaking its head. Failed. Failed? Zire. A faint cracking sound broke the silence, drawing Julian's attention to the egg. Zire crack. At first there was only a single small crack. But within seconds it split into 2, then 3, and before Julian could fully process it, the entire surface of the egg was webbed with cracks. This. Julian stood up from his spot, taking a step back from the egg. And then, bang! The egg shattered and a single black cat flew out of it. In an instant, the connection Julian had lost with the cat surged back just as a shadow burst free from the egg, flinging itself into the air. Falling onto the ground, a familiar black cat appeared, and on the spot where the egg used to be was another egg. It looked exactly the same as before, from the little details to the coloring. It was almost as if nothing had happened to it. And yet, he distinctly recalled seeing the cracks and them splitting apart. What in the world? Staring at the egg in shock, Julian's gaze eventually fell on Pebble. His expression froze the moment he saw the cat staring blankly towards the sky above. He felt like saying something, but feeling the owl's gaze and seeing it shake its head, Julian closed his mouth and looked at the egg again. Why did it fail? A month later. Bang! Bang! Drums echoed loudly across a vast plaza where a towering cathedral loomed at its center. Built from dark stone that gleamed beneath the bright sun, the cathedral overlooked streets crowded with devoted followers. Today was an important day. Today was the day when the saint of the Church of Heraclius would officially become the new pope of the church. Despite the recent chaos and controversy with the saint, the cardinals and members of the church decided to give the position to Jackal. To address public scrutiny, they all announced that the reason for Jackal's recent actions was that he was suddenly overwhelmed with the power that he was inheriting, turning him mad. However, they also reassured the people that this problem was one that would quickly resolve. Today marked the day when Jackal would make his first appearance to the public. The smell of incense lingered in the air, and important figures from all over attended the ceremony. Watching the entire scene from one of the upper floors, a middle-aged man with a few wrinkles, brown hair, and narrow eyes rested his hand on the marble railing, feeling its warm surface beneath his palm. "It's almost time," he mumbled, pulling his hand back. "I've been waiting for quite some time now. It is time that I reap the rewards of my patience." The man slowly shifted his gaze toward the room behind him. A tall door stood between them, but to his eyes it might as well not have been there at all. Inside the room he could see a figure lying on the floor, his body soaked in sweat and alarmingly thin, as if he hadn't eaten in weeks. His face was ghostly pale, and his long hair had begun to thin, clinging to his skin in damp strands. Although slowly, his chest was still moving, showing that he was still alive. However, he didn't have much time left. It would soon be his turn to make his move. Swoosh! Just then a figure appeared before the middle-aged man, head bowed in a gesture of submission. The middle-aged man smiled. "Dawn." "Yes." Slowly raising his head, Dawn's yellow eyes came into full display as Cithrus's smile widened slightly. "It is good to see that you're here. We've got a lot of work ahead of us." Placing his hand against the marble railing once more and looking down at the massive crowd beneath the cathedral, Cithrus calmly looked at the room where Jack was once again. "Within the next hour he will have absorbed all of the blood. That will be the time that I act." "I understand." Dawn nodded his head. "I will protect." "No." Cithrus stopped Dawn before he could finish his sentence, stunning him. "I don't need your protection." Cithrus smiled while looking at Dawn. "I've got other people to take care of that." Immediately several presences appeared in the surroundings, stunning Dawn. While he had a vague inkling that they had been present, he hadn't been able to detect their exact position. "How was this?" "Don't worry about them. They're a little special. There's something more important that I need you to take care of." "Something more important?" Dawn looked at Cithrus in confusion. What could be more important than absorbing Oracleus's blood and gaining his power? Seeing the look on Dawn's face, Cithrus smiled once again while shaking his head. "I will most likely fail to absorb the blood." "Huh?" Dawn's eyes snapped wide upon hearing Cithrus's words. "Fail? How could? The chance of me failing is extremely high." What?" Dawn's usually calm face was nowhere to be seen. The shock he felt was too hard to hide. This isn't surprising. Cithrus was not dumb. He had already more or less figured out that this was a scheme designed by Oracleus in order to buy himself some time. For what? To collect a relic? To grow stronger? There were a lot of possibilities that crossed Cithrus's mind. But was time the only thing that Oracleus wanted? Obviously not. Cithrus knew Oracleus extremely well. From his powers to the way he thought. After all, a lot of the things he had learned were from him. And as such he understood something very clearly. He didn't just do it to buy time. He did it because he also knew that I would fail to digest the blood. What did this mean? Wait, Dawn's voice shook Cithrus out of his thoughts, causing him to raise his brow. "If you're gonna fail, why?" "Because I have to try," Cithrus answered while sparing Dawn a glance. He craved to have Oracleus's power. He wanted nothing more than to see the future. To understand the things that he didn't understand and predict the things that he couldn't predict. Even if the chances of him failing were extremely high, he had to do it. Emmett knew this. He was the type to exploit this sort of information. And if I'm Emmett, I would probably use this chance to attack myself or do some heavy damage to one of my powers. However, I doubt he will be able to do anything to the hidden organizations, since I've made sure it would be impossible, meaning that, if my guess is correct, there will be an attack on the Emperor soon. What? The shock on Dawn's face had just subsided when it suddenly returned once more. However, Cithrus continued calmly assessing everything that he knew about Emmett and the recent information that he had learned. Whether it's a ploy to buy time by sparking some kind of throne struggle while developing a new force, or a quiet attempt to seize control of the throne and get closer to me unnoticed by pretending to be the Emperor, these two are the most likely scenarios. Either way, a new power is bound to rise from all of this. And that power... Cithrus quietly licked his lips, feeling his lips pull up again. It would most likely belong to Noel and Emmett. Cithrus slowly turned his attention towards Dawn. "Make do with the information I have given you. There's a chance that my estimates are wrong, but I doubt it. After all, just like Emmett could read him, Cithrus had also learned to read him. I'd like to hear some good news once I finish with my task." Chapter 700. Mind-Body Connection Realm 1. Chapter 700. Mind-Body Connection Realm 1. Who? I exhaled slowly, leaning back to feel the soft grass beneath me as a gentle breeze brushed against my skin. Reaching out, I stretched my hand toward the distant moon and closed my fingers into a fist, hiding it from view. A month had passed since I had returned from the mirror dimension, and in said time I spent most of it training. I was trying to get used to the Eye of Heraclius and the Eye of Existence. I spent a lot of time experimenting with the two. Well, sort of. The thing that I was able to find out was that the Eye of Existence consumed more mana with more people that I used it on, and that my current limit was those 2 tiers above me. In that sense, it would still work on a tier 8 user, but only for a brief moment before my mana completely depleted. In that sense, using it on someone would be stupid. For the Eye of Heraclius, it's a mess. The effect of the skill was certainly powerful, and using it wasn't hard. But the issue lay in the fact that it had a long cooldown period. According to Noel, it ranged between a year to 2. Thankfully, there were ways to reduce the cooldown. But it mainly had to do with me collecting the chalice. I did try contacting Leon to get him to come to the house, but he rejected me, saying something about needing to do a few things in Haven and that he was currently stuck there. Probably something to do with his prince position. Leon's life was anything but easy at the moment. Maybe I should have gone to him, but it's not like I am also in a position to move. The noble houses around were starting to stir. Any day now and a conflict could arise. It was important that I remained here in order to help Noel deliver a blow to the troops of the other noble houses. Noel also insisted that this was more important for now. In that case, I could only relent and focus on training by myself. The progress, not so great. Regardless of how much I try, it doesn't seem like I'll be able to reach the 7th tier anytime soon. My previous method of reaching the 7th tier, it didn't work out. In that case, there wasn't much I could do except focus on my cursed magic. I had been making steady progress, but without the system to guide me, I had no real way of knowing how well I was actually doing. Usually I'd receive some sort of experience notification to tell me that I was progressing. Now, it was just me. I was going into it blindly. You seem lost. Suddenly a familiar voice pulled me out of my thoughts. I turned to see Noel slowly emerging from one of the bushes. Russell. Looking at him, the first thing I noticed was his eyes. Although it didn't show, I could tell. You're tired. Been for a very long time. Noel replied, smiling. That smile. It looked warm, but I could see the tiredness in it. Stopping not far from me, he looked around and then settled his gaze over to me again. Given how much you were frowning, I take it that your training didn't go so well. You're still struggling to break through. I am. I didn't see the need to lie to Noel. I don't know what it is. I can feel that my mana is slowly increasing and my body is growing stronger, but I somehow can't seem to reach the next level. Is there something that I'm doing wrong? Rather than answering, the smile on Noel's face deepened. But with that face, his smile only made me uncomfortable. And for some reason, he looked to be amused by my struggle. What? No, nothing. Noel shrugged, sitting down on the grass while leaning his hands back to support himself. I just find this sight to be somewhat refreshing. What are you? You usually have all the answers. Even back then, when you were still getting stronger, this kind of thing never seemed to trip you up. Maybe it was easier back then, but still. Seeing you like this feels somewhat refreshing. I frowned. What sort of nonsense was he spouting? I had that much pride. Now? I didn't care as much about nonsense like that. You've definitely changed, and Noel paused, looking back at me. It's not a bad change. That? Thanks. I felt a little happy about his compliment, but I also knew that he wasn't here for some meager chatter. Considering you're here, I'm guessing the nobles have made their move? Do you need me to step in or do something? No, not really. Noel shook his head, looking rather tired. The nobles have indeed made their move, but there's no need for you to move just yet. I just wanted to come here to relax for a moment. It's going to be a rough couple of months. Tell me about it. I could already imagine all the chaos that was soon going to unfold. The problem wasn't even the surrounding noble houses. According to what I'd heard from Noel, his plan was meant to be quick and precise. The real issue lay in his intent to kill the Emperor. The chaos that such action would bring was already giving me headaches. I'm also sure it's not going to be that easy. And what happens if he fails? No, I doubt he will fail. I'm sure he's made a lot of arrangements in order not to fail. Noel had changed a lot. He was extremely meticulous now. I knew that he could do this, but what about me? Where did I fit in all of this? Oof. Noel slowly rose to his feet, brushing off his clothes, a fine black coat with black fur at the back and a few gold embroideries, a white shirt and black pants, as he turned his gaze toward me. Above him, the moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale glow over his figure. He extended his hand towards me. Since I've got some time to myself, and since you're struggling so much, should I take this time to teach you a bit? Ah! My eyes widened involuntarily as I looked at Noel with a baffled look. Teach me? Him? What? Noel smiled, his hand brushing against his hair. You don't trust your own brother? He suddenly shrugged. I'll have you know that despite my current strength, I used to be one of the 7 gods. They called me Mortem and all of that. If it's knowledge, he pointed at his temple. I've got plenty of it. This, I wanted to argue but realized that I couldn't. Noel was right. If there was anyone who was more qualified to teach me, then it'd have to be him. It wasn't like the thought of asking him had never crossed my mind, but he always seemed so busy that I ignored it. Well, looking at the hand, I smiled and reached for it. All right, I grabbed it. Teach me. Do you know what the difference between the 6th and 7th tiers is? Noel suddenly asked, his eyes fixed on his brother. It was a question that had been lingering in Noel's mind for a while as he quietly observed Emmett. There's a major leap between each tier body reformation domain and the rest. But do you know what the real difference is between the 6th and 7th tier? Noel watched as Emmett paused before answering. It's something about consolidation? Yes. Noel nodded quietly. There are actually several things you're meant to accomplish when reaching the 7th tier. It's a major step. Not as drastic as a monster evolving from terror to destroyer, but you could call it the preparation stage before reaching the 8th tier. And that will be a critical turning point. The 6th and 7th tiers specifically were preparatory tiers. Reaching the 7th tier granted a noticeable boost in mana capacity, physical strength, and mental function. However, beyond those enhancements, there weren't any dramatic changes. Nothing like the leap at the 5th tier, which marked the first true major milestone. This will all be preparation for reaching the mind-body connection realm. I'm sure you've learned about this at the academy. Seeing the lost look on his brother's face, Noel's face grew a little slack. Scratching the side of his face, Emmett replied. About that. I do know a little bit, but it's only small bits and pieces. I spent a lot of time outside of the academy. Oh right. Noel did recall this. It wasn't just this time with the mirror dimension. Many times too. Okay, fine. Noel pinched the bridge of his nose. He should have seen this coming. Since you're still far away from it, I'll just give you a brief summary of it. The mind-body connection realm is the realm just before the domain integration one. Seeing his brother's reaction, Noel secretly shook his head. It seems like he really doesn't know. That's something far off into the future, but once you reach tier 9, you'll be able to integrate your domain into yourself. But before you can even do that, you must first connect your mind with your body. Noel flicked his hand and a magic circle appeared. This sequence of events happened in a fraction of a second. What are the things that usually delay a spell? Noel didn't wait for his brother to reply before answering. It's the mind. The slower your mind is at forming the runes needed for a spell, the slower the spell itself. In the mind-body connection realm, the goal is to eliminate that delay entirely. You'll find everything becomes sharper faster. Spells will flow like second nature. This becomes crucial when you need to integrate your domain into your body. I see. Emmett nodded, seemingly understanding. Before Noel could say anything else, Emmett spoke. In that case, since you said tiers 6 and 7 are meant to build the foundation for this realm, I'm guessing tier 6 focuses on the mind with all the obsession stuff and tier 7 is about the body? Correct. Noel smiled. Emmett had always been quick with this type of stuff, so he wasn't that surprised that he had figured this much out. However, it was gratifying to see. Especially when Noel saw a look of understanding on Emmett's face as he closed his eyes and sat down on the grass. I understand. Emmett smiled bitterly. I can see why it's taking me so long to improve. Actually, suddenly interrupting, Noel looked at Emmett. There is one way to make you reach the 7th tier faster. Huh? Emmett's head snapped toward Noel, surprise flickering across his face. But didn't you? Well, it's not like I didn't actually have it. It's just that this method. Noel paused, his expression growing a little grim. I'm not sure you'll like it. Especially since it involves my blood. Chapter 701. Mind-Body Connection Realm. 2. What do you mean you're not sure I'm going to like it? From the looks of things, I really won't like it. I already didn't like it. Just the look on Noel's face made me not want to do whatever he was trying to suggest. It's not that bad. Is that bad? Noel's brows furrowed. I said it isn't. Sure. Though he tried to make it seem like it wasn't. I knew my brother all too well. Even after a lot of years had passed, I could see when he was lying. Still, it wasn't like I wasn't willing to hear it. Tell me what this method is. I'll consider it after hearing you. It's not much, Noel answered, trying to keep his tone light while he started to explain. Normally, the body grows stronger over time as the mana channels gradually adapt to the flow of mana being used, kind of like building muscle. It's a slow and steady process. That's why it's taking so long for you. Your body is just not there yet. And the key is to get your body to adapt to said mana. Usually this can only be arranged with time and maturity, but well, there's another faster and shorter way to stop dragging the explanation out. What is it? Overload your body with mana and then use my blood to repair it. Repeat it until your mana channels grow significantly stronger than before. Then it, alright, I've heard enough. I cut Noel off before he could finish his words. I pretty much understand what he was trying to imply. I refuse. But, yes, I understand that we don't have much time, but I still won't do it. I was well aware of the state that Noel was in. He was in no state to offer up some of his blood to me. Furthermore, he was also planning on killing the Emperor. Chances were that he was going to fail whatever he was planning on doing if he were to offer up his blood to me. And not only that, I'm tired of breaking down and subjecting myself to an endless amount of pain in order to grow stronger. I know that I'll eventually reach Tier 7. It might take several more months, but I'd rather take my time than force it. At the very least, I wasn't going to become stronger like this. Not unless I had no choice. I had a choice. Feeling the gentle rustling of the grass beneath me and the silence that took over, I looked at Noel, who stood on the opposite end, his clothes fluttering alongside the wind as the two of us stared at each other. He stood like that, his face calm, until he lowered his head and smiled. You really did change. He looked somewhat relieved as he looked at me. Taking a step back, he raised both hands. All right. If this is the path you want to take, I won't stop you. If you do ever change your mind, I'll be waiting. I may not have my heart anymore, but there's still plenty of blood left in me. I'm good. I didn't think I'd ever take him up on the offer. Never say never. All right, stop it. Noel smiled again. At the same time, his head lowered as he seemed to notice something. You picked up the sword again? Sword? Looking down at my hip, I glanced at the sword that was resting on the hilt. Oh right, I had kept it with me because I was so used to having it with me as Lazarus. No, not really. That's rather surprising. You were quite strong with the sword. I did try to get you a body that was suitable for the sword, but I failed in that aspect. I even tried to improve his talent and got him obsessed with the sword, but Noel stopped there, especially given how I was looking at him. What is it? He cocked his head slightly. You're giving me a weird look. It was as if he didn't notice anything wrong with his words at all. Right, it's about time that I asked him. I've always wondered about this. Regarding Julian, are you the father? Julian? Noel blinked, the gears in his mind slowly turning until my words clicked and he burst out laughing. Of course not. I had been preparing for quite some time, but I only took over once Aldrich passed away. His body wasn't exactly the strongest. Oh, I felt a lot more relieved upon hearing his words. But only for a moment. Not that I wouldn't have done it if I had the choice. What? Noel looked at me, his smile seeming extremely thin. In my current state, there's no way I can do anything that you're imagining. But if I had to do it, I would have done it. In fact, I would have probably been able to accomplish much more. However, Julian was the most suitable body for emotive magic. His talent was good enough to serve as a good body. Oh, I swallowed quietly, feeling the current Noel to be completely different from the warm Noel that had been speaking to me just a few moments prior. If I had to take a guess, then the reason why Julian's mother joined. But of course, I made it so that she would go there. Why else would you think someone like her could become a seat? Noel retained his smile and I felt my breath pause. Right? I had been wondering that too. How is it possible for Julian's mother to be this strong, yet her sons aren't nearly as talented? While it's true that I've become strong, that's mainly because of the weird system. I used to struggle a lot before that. In that case, is she on our... Oh no. Noel cut me off. She's definitely not on our side, but it doesn't matter. I prefer it to be this way. It'll make things easier further down the line when she'll be of use. I see. There were a lot of things that I wanted to say or ask at the moment. However, staring at the current Noel, I couldn't find it in me to ask any more. I knew that Noel had changed. I knew that I couldn't expect Noel to be the same innocent child that he used to be. With everything that he had gone through, this was to be expected. Yeah, it's expected. But even though I knew and understood, couldn't help but feel sad. This was my fault. It was without a doubt my fault. But when was something not my fault? Covering my face with both hands, I plopped down against the grass and stared at the distant sky above. I'm tired. So tired. Verdant Empire. Swoosh. Swoosh. A silver streak flashed through the air too fast for the eye to follow. Moments later, several large chunks of armor clattered to the ground. Clank. Clank. Placing his sword back to his hilt, Leon's gray eyes stared at the dummies on the floor. His brows furrowed slightly at the sight. Still not fast enough. He needed to be faster. Not bad. A deep voice suddenly echoed, snapping Leon out of his thoughts. He turned his head to see a large burly figure approaching. The man wore heavy armor emblazoned with a massive lion at the center, his long white hair and thick beard making him look rather valiant. Knight Commander. Leon immediately lowered his head to greet the man. He was Albert J. Condi, the Knight Commander who served the Emperor and one of the 4 monarchs of the Verdant Empire. Looking at what you've performed, you seem to be just one step away from reaching the sword assimilation realm. That's pretty good. In fact, that's extremely impressive when considering your age. Thank you. Sword mastery was divided into 5 tiers. Foundation sword resonance, 1 heart, 1 sword, sword assimilation, and sword sovereignty. Unlike with mind and elemental paths, the body path had different means of growth. While the tiers were the same, what truly separated one body user from another was the degree of mastery in their respective weapon, be it fist or anything else. In Leon's case, having reached the 6th tier, he was considered extremely powerful. However, if he were to face someone of the same tier but had reached the sword assimilation, he'd without a doubt lose. Sword assimilation was the state where the sword and the wielder were in near-perfect sync. Movements were instinctual and reaction time was nearly instant. Leon craved to reach such mastery. But I'm still far off from reaching the sword assimilation mastery. That's only understandable. I was at least 2 tiers higher than you before I reached it. Albert laughed, patting Leon with his large hand. Feeling the power behind the gentle tap, Leon's face twitched, but he didn't let it show. The Knight Commander had helped him quite a lot recently. He was the main reason why Leon had been able to see massive improvements in his skills. So long as he kept going down this path, Leon was confident in becoming even stronger. I'm sure he's also getting stronger now. Thinking about him, Leon couldn't help but bitterly smile. There was a time when the two of them used to be on the same level. He was just a tiny bit weaker than Julian, but Leon could still keep up with Julian. But ever since the trip to the mirror dimension, Leon realized that Julian had changed a lot. The gap between the two of them had expanded more than ever. That was why Leon didn't decide to stick with Julian, even though he could have. Everything he had told Julian was just an excuse. He just needed some time to himself and improve. I'm sure the others are also the same. Raising his head and looking up at the Knight Commander, Leon sighed and lowered his head. Please teach me again. Sensing the silence coming from the Knight Commander, Leon raised his head to see him smiling at him. Eventually, with a laugh, he answered, I wouldn't be here if I didn't want to teach you. Leon smiled back and raised his sword. I'm coming. Good, come. Clank. Sparks flew in all directions. End of volume 5. Relatively shorter volume. I wanted to go through the power system at the end of the volume since I neglected it quite a bit. Either way, this is the end of the 5th volume, which will lead up to the 6th one, which will be a rather chaotic one. Chapter 702. Death on. Tick tick. 10:23 p.m. The area has been cleared. We can proceed with our advancement. Our time is limited. We need to be extremely swift with our operation. It was dead in the night. Rustle. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale glow over the forest below. A gentle wind stirred the leaves, whispering through the trees. Deep within the woods, shadowy figures began to stir, emerging one by one as they stared at the path ahead of them. Time was ticking. They needed to move as fast and as swiftly as possible. The eastern perimeter has been cleared. There wasn't much of a resistance. While they moved, voices whispered into their ears. The western perimeter has also been cleared. You can go ahead and move further in. Their forces have been thinned out a lot. This shouldn't be difficult. Understood. The figures gradually picked up their pace. There were 10 of them in total, each belonging to an elite assassination unit. Their presence was thin and their formation was tight, making sure that they stood approximately a few meters apart from each other. Each one of them was a highly trained operative. Aside from the emperor, the ruling duchies, and the monarchs themselves, there were few targets in the world they couldn't eliminate. Currently, they had one goal: assassinate the head of the Ivinus household. He was their current target. The operation was one that had been under preparation for a very long time. No one understood who the real mastermind behind the operation was, but it was mainly a collective of neighboring noble houses. With the Ivinus household's recent rise and struggle after swallowing the Ramsel-Kaliak mines and Hindua territories, they became a prime target for the taking. Of course, such a large operation wouldn't slide with the Megrail household. Hence, they were undertaking the current operation. If Viscount Ivinus were to somehow die, it would provide the perfect justification for the other noble houses to move in and claim a piece of his territory. Having already done the splits beforehand, all focus was now on the operation. Slow down. You've reached the outskirts of Valemont. The Ivinus household is now ahead of you. Whenever you're ready, you may begin. Upon hearing the voice, the 4 figures stopped. They checked the time. Tick tick. 10:25 p.m. Their bodies tensed up slightly. Not out of fear, but out of readiness. Normally, the distance between Valemount Westbourne's main city and the Ivinus estate would take an hour to traverse. But at their current speed, they could cover it in just 3 minutes. You have exactly 10 minutes in order to complete the mission. Make sure you do not go over the time limit. 3 minutes to get there. 5 minutes to complete their task and 1 minute to escape and leave. Escaping was easier than infiltrating for them. They each had their own means to escape. Are you ready? The bodies of the 10 figures tightened, a powerful pressure coming out of their bodies, their eyes were constricted, and they set their gaze towards the distance. Then, as their bodies started to warm up, the world grew silent. Your 10 minutes start now. May the operation begin. Swoosh! The surrounding greenery rustled as their figures vanished, darting through the distance with astonishing speed. With their speed, they were able to cover the massive gap between Velamount and the household in a matter of minutes. Tick-tick, 10:27 p.m. By the time the second minute clocked in, the estate appeared in the vision of all 10 figures as they came to a stop, quietly evening out their breathing, as they all settled their gaze towards the second floor where they could see the light of the office was still on. The target should be there. I sensed several presences within the place, but they're all rather weak. Let's enter quickly. They didn't waste a single second. No, they couldn't waste a single second. By the time their breathing was back to normal, they started moving again, infiltrating the estate as quietly and as swiftly as possible, moving past the few guards and butlers that remained within the estate. By the time they arrived at the office of the Viscount, they actually found that they had more than half a minute to spare. Let's go. Their figures merged with the darkness, dissolving into shadows as they slipped through the narrow gap beneath the door. It was there that they caught sight of a figure standing by the window, slowly unbuttoning his white shirt. The room was extremely silent. It was so quiet that one be able to hear a pin drop. Tick-tick, 10:28 p.m. But eventually the silence was shattered. My brother most likely doesn't like how much I've changed. The figures in the room tensed for a moment, looking at each other in alarm. Could he have sensed them? No, that shouldn't be possible. They were all aware of the Viscount's strength. In fact, even now they could see he was merely a tier 3. It's not like I wanted to change. That's the last thing that I wanted to do. It's just that change sometimes is necessary in order to survive. The Viscount's voice grew even softer, his sharp gaze moving away from the window and onto the room. Even then I tried. I really tried not to show him what I've truly become. But it's harder than I thought. I think I'm too far gone now. There's no coming back for me, but that's fine. He's changed for the better, and that's gratifying to see. As his eyes wandered around the room, they eventually fell on a certain spot. It was the lamp that rested beside one of the sofas around the room. That's why it doesn't matter if I am like this. The shadow of the lamp wiggled, splitting apart in seconds before reforming into 10 different cloaked figures that appeared on each side of Aldrich, stabbing at his body in all directions. Head, neck, heart, stomach. They attacked all of the vitals in one synchronized attack. Spurt. Blood leaked everywhere. Success. Before one of them could even get their words out, a hand shot straight towards them as their eyes widened, and they took a step back, slashing their swords at the hand and severing it directly. Thump. The hand fell onto the ground while the cloaked figures looked at Aldrich, keeping their weapons lodged into his body. And yet, standing in silence, Aldrich stared at his hand. Why is he not falling? What's going on? His abnormal reaction set everyone on edge. Should be soon. Maybe it's... Everyone stopped abruptly. The world turned quiet as all eyes fell on Aldrich, who still stared at his severed arm. Then, a terrifying sight unfolded as fibers burst from the severed area, rapidly intertwining to form a new hand. The sight brought everything to a sudden standstill, as the cloaked figures couldn't understand what had happened. How could this? This doesn't make any sense. Of course it does. Aldrich's calm voice echoed, bringing them out of their thoughts as he reached his hand for the nearest person. Immediately they moved back, slicing at the approaching hand with a pair of daggers. Thump! A familiar scene played out, but the moment of relief vanished quickly as Aldrich's arm continued forward, regenerating mid-motion, grabbing onto the figure's head. Bang! Blood sprayed all over as a figure limply fell onto the floor. The sequence of events occurred in the fraction of a second, and by the time the others had reacted, it was already too late. Tack! Snapping out of it, they all attacked Aldrich at once, slicing at every part of his body. However, despite the onslaught of attacks, Aldrich remained indifferent to it all. Every cut stitched itself as if time rewound. Every wound faded like ink washed from parchment. Every lost limb bloomed anew. What is happening? How is this happening? Realizing the situation, the people grew horrified. But it was too late. Aldrich was relentless. Even with all the wounds and severed body parts, he continued to slowly and steadily kill each member that attacked him. His calmness and indifference brought chills to the surroundings as Aldrich's eyes grew hazy. Mortem. It was a word derived from Latin meaning death. It was a name that Noel had never understood. His powers, it made it so that he himself would never die. He was immortal. There were far more fitting names for him than Mortem. It was surprisingly Emmett who had told him the name was fitting for him. Back then Noel didn't understand. But after everything that had gone through, he now understood. He wasn't called Mortem because he was immortal. Spurt. Squeezing the head of another cloaked figure and feeling their blood spurt all over his face, Noel's eyes flashed. Do not fear death. He tossed the body to the side while directed his gaze towards another figure. A long sword stabbed at his neck, nearly severing it in two. However, it just stopped before it could, as fibers wove themselves across the severed area, restoring Noel's neck and in the process shattering the sword. I have touched death. Felt death. Noel's gaze paused on the cloaked figure before reaching forward again. A scream followed. A limb fell, but Noel continued. Nobody could stop him. Spurt defied death. Noel continued to kill. His body was soaked in blood, but he was untouched. They called him monster, but he was no monster. He was just... Noel paused, his breathing calm as he closed his eyes and looked around. All that met him was the sight of severed limbs and bodies. Silence. He was the only one left. I have now become death. Mortem. Chapter 703. Death. 2. It all happened incredibly fast. In one moment I was in my room quietly waiting to go to bed, and in the next moment I felt powerful fluctuations coming from the second floor of the estate. Noel's office. I dropped whatever I was doing and rushed there. However, what greeted me was an unexpected sight. What are the chances of you telling me what happened over here? Standing in the center of the office, his clothes spotless and his body untouched, Noel casually glanced around at the corpses strewn across the floor. The sight wasn't a pretty one, with limbs and pieces of flesh lying throughout. Inevitably, an intense smell of blood lingered in the air as I took a step back out of the office. The smell is nothing big, Noel casually answered while looking around before bending over one of the corpses and taking out what looked to be a small pocket watch. There was an assassination attempt. I dealt with them. They weren't particularly difficult to deal with. So you say, but looking at the corpses in front of me I could tell that they all belonged to quite powerful individuals. While I couldn't make a proper estimate, they all seemed to be at least around tier 5 and above. My guess is tier 5, but they look highly trained. How did Noel beat them? While I knew that Noel was by no means weak, he was currently injured. No, he didn't even have a heart. Your strength should be at around tier 3. How in the world did you Just because my power has regressed doesn't mean my body has. The only things that diminished are my mana density and my ability to wield it. Physically, I'm still more than capable of handling people like them. Oh, that did sound like a reasonable argument. I hadn't seen him fight, but the sight before me did prove his point. We don't have much time. Noel suddenly spoke, staring at the pocket watch. Taking into consideration that approximately 4 minutes have passed since the fight started, it looks like we have about 2 to 3 minutes to take action. What was he saying? Yes, I was expecting something like this to happen. I've been waiting for it to happen for quite some time now. Noel quietly walked towards his desk, where he unfolded a map of the entire Ivinus territory pointing towards the outskirts of Westernbourne, our main territory, and where we were currently. In order for the operation to succeed, they infiltrated Westernbourne from all sides. The perimeter of the territory should currently be taken over by the troops of the other noble houses. The moment the assassination is a success, they'll start closing in, swiftly taking over the entire territory in one swoop. Tick tick. Noel took out the pocket watch again. The moment they receive the confirmation, the first thing they'll do is strike Valemont. The moment they take over Valemont will be the moment that we lose the war. If that's the case, time's up. Noel extended his finger and pressed it onto the top of the pocket watch. Immediately the ticking stopped and the surroundings grew quiet. The wind blew through the open window and Noel smiled as he looked at me. They've now started their attack. Not far off. We've received the signal. Let's start moving. Quick. Thousands of troops moved in at the same time, moving around the forest that surrounded the Westerbourne territory. At the helm of the troops in the western area was the Knight Commander of the Wilshire March. His presence was nothing short of impressive, suppressing everything within his vicinity. Carrying a large broadsword at his back, he was like a tall mountain. All of a sudden he stopped and his hand raised. The soldiers behind him stopped. What's going on? Did something happen, Captain? Ignoring the murmurs and whispers coming from behind him, the captain stared ahead, his thick brows furrowing tightly as his black hair tied in a ponytail fluttered faintly. Eventually he turned to his right, where a small and lanky man with a bald head appeared. Strategist, something is wrong. Wrong? What's wrong is there? Confused, the strategist looked at the captain. We're almost at Valemont. The other noble houses are about to arrive there. The operation was successful. Once we take over Valemont, we'll have taken the core of the Ivinus household. Everything will come easy after that. That's not what I'm worried about. The captain raised his head and sniffed the air. His face tightened as his eyes narrowed. My instincts are telling me that there is something wrong with the city. I'd rather hold our troops here for now and wait for what happens later. Even if we do end up joining later, it won't matter much. We're still the most powerful group present. The strategist remained silent. However, after a short while he nodded his head. Understood. We'll follow the captain's orders. Though the strategist personally opposed the idea, he placed his trust in the captain's judgment. There was a reason Marquis Wilshire had chosen him for the role. Captain Albaz was a man of exceptional capability. There had been many instances where his instincts had been correct, and as a result he managed to save a lot of soldiers. There have been of course instances where he had been wrong but the losses weren't that bad. We'll wait for the next 10 minutes. If nothing happens by then we'll start moving as well. Checking his pocket watch, the captain closed his eyes and started meditating. The soldiers around him did the same and the surroundings grew silent. At the same time, the captain turned off the communications with the other noble houses. The breeze swept through, flattening the grass as the world turned quiet, broken only by the steady synchronized breathing of the soldiers. At exactly the 10th minute, the captain opened his eyes and stood up. The soldiers followed along with his example and moved towards Valemont. What greeted them near the city was a raging ball of fire. Screams and blood. It was a trap. The captain muttered, the fire in the distance reflected within his brown eyes. The assassination attempt failed. This was most likely a scheme set up in advance in order to lure us in. There's a chance that the Ivinus household might have been planning for this since the start and that all the previous news that we've heard about them was false. Slowly turning his head, the captain looked at the strategist. Report all of this to the Marquis. He took a deep breath. We'll need more troops if we wish to take over the Ivinus household. Embers drifted through the air, glowing faintly in my vision. The scent of smoke hung in the air and the ground crumbled softly beneath my feet as I stepped over the ash that had formed in the aftermath of the situation. I looked around me in a daze. He didn't hold back at all. While I didn't have many memories of Valemont, I did remember it being rather bustling as a result of the gold mine situation. It was filled with people and it was developing by the day. However, it was completely different now. The place was deserted and a lot of the buildings were broken or burned to the ground. I had the citizens evacuated before all of this happened. I replaced them all with soldiers. Walking ahead of me with his hands behind his back, Noel looked at the spectacle before him with not much of an expression. He just seemed indifferent to it all. Eventually he came to a stop. A figure appeared in front of him, whispering something to him that I couldn't quite make out. In the end, after relaying everything to Noel, the figure moved back as Noel turned his attention towards him. The plan was a partial success. Partial? We've managed to deal a heavy blow to the core of several households. The troops stationed near their border will now launch their own attack. Though I didn't know the full extent of the forces Noel had gathered, I could sense that their strength was more than enough to handle the households that had launched the attack. But why was he saying that this was a partial success? One of the households managed to notice that this was all a trap. I've sent several troops to close down on them. They will most likely suffer a lot of losses while trying to escape, but they'll still be able to do so. They've also most likely figured out what we've been planning. Someone noticed? My brows furrowed. Thinking about everything that had happened and all of the plans that Noel had set in motion, I found myself rather surprised by this. In fact, I was also somewhat apprehensive. Yes, it's those from the Wilshire March. If I have to take a guess, it's either the strategist or the captain who noticed. They're both quite renowned within the space. In that case, it doesn't matter. Noel shook his head while staring directly at me. This will be something that you'll have to deal with yourself. Me? What sort of? You'll be taking over my position as the head of the household very soon. Huh? I looked at Noel in bafflement. What did he just say? Noel merely turned his head away from me, looking elsewhere with a distant look. Once I've taken care of the Emperor, there will be no more place for me to stay. I've already laid out everything that you'll need to do in my absence. In the meantime, I will have no choice but to leave and look for my heart. Wait, but I know that you want to help, but the best thing you can do is grow the Ivinus household stronger. That's all I need you to do. I've already laid all of the foundations for you to grow. My job is to take care of everything else. A faint smile touched Noel's lips, his eyes catching the glow of a drifting ember as he spoke again. We're close, Emmett. He muttered. We're very close to achieving our dream. Don't lose sight of the goal. If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions. Just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.